Mayoral Memo with Matthew Dickinson from Dubbo Regional Council.
Zero breakfast, 10 minutes past 8 for your Monday morning. Mayor Matt Dickinson joins us. Good morning, mate.
Good morning, Keegan. How are you going today?
I'm all right. I've just come back from Sydney and now you're down there. We must have crossed paths without realising.
Must have crossed in the air potentially. But that is the convenient thing about Dubbo. We've got that many flights to go between Dubbo and Sydney that it is convenient to duck away. A long weekend, maybe people duck down to Sydney. It's a pretty easy place to get to.
Yeah, I'm actually quite surprised. The accessibility of transport in various forms here actually took me by surprise.
And we've even got direct flights to places like Melbourne, like Brisbane, like Newcastle. So we've got other direct flights apart from those Sydney ones. But there's a lot of flights between Sydney and Dubbo, so it's very convenient to get to.
Something else that's taken me by surprise is when I discovered that one of the toilets here in the area, the public toilets, is actually 3D printed. Now, I've been seeing in the news that there is, with council, there's considerations of adding more toilets. I think it's in Wellington. Will we be cracking out the 3D printer again?
That's a very good question. We've got to make a decision to actually build more toilets in Wellington first. In Cameron Park, the toilets were replaced several years ago, but unfortunately, when they were replaced with a lower number of toilets. So it's a bit of a problem for Wellington now when, for example, a bus might stop there and people get out and they've got to line up too long to go to the toilet. So sometimes buses don't stop there and that means less money for the Wellington economy. So we're certainly looking at other options to either add to those toilets in Cameron Park or replace those. So no decision has been made, but I think the success of the 3D printed toilets in Lions Park in West Dubbo, certainly if there were more toilets to be built, I would assume that 3D printed toilets would be up there with one of the valid options.
I'm curious, when it comes to, say, the construction of a traditional public toilet compared to like a 3D printed one, what's the differences between like the construction costs and the amount of time that it takes to actually build it?
Well, we looked at some previous toilets when we did that 3D printed toilet, and there were two examples. Actually, one example was the Cameron Park toilets, and the other example was the toilets that were built in Church Street, just near the Rotunda in Dubbo. And so in very round numbers, the toilets that were built in Cameron Park a few years ago were about $300,000. The toilets that were built in Church Street near the Rotunda were about $500,000. And then the new toilets we printed over in Lions Park, West Dubbo, were about $300,000. So similar cost to the Cameron Park toilets and cheaper than the ones in Church Street. Having said that, we've got more toilets out of that amount of money. And also remember that building costs have gone up. So those other two toilet blocks were built previously, so when it was obviously a little bit cheaper to build. So in terms of what you get value for money wise, I've actually found the 3D printed toilet scenario was very cost effective, but also very quick to build. And people that were there watching those, they saw the gantry be set up over a weekend, the printing started, and basically the gantry was packed up and gone the next week. So it's a pretty quick process to build the external walls. Obviously, you've still got to do the internal fit out.
And I'm sure the whole thing of it slowly rising up as they do it layer by layer would actually be quite fascinating to watch. Another thing I've seen about, I think we're having a good conversation about waste this morning on the show, there is the change in the way that people do their council cleanups.
Yeah, and this has been an interesting issue. Other council areas, and I think you've even come from one that had one where you did a pre-booking service. And so
that's right.
We looked at some other places, Tamworth, Central Coast, Camden, Wallandilly, Penrith, Lake Macquarie, a range of other council areas we looked at, that you do a pre-book service. Now, the current bulky waste collection, there's a 13-week period where your waste is collected. You look on a program, there are 7 different zones. You can see that your zone is a certain time frame, and people always want to get their rubbish out early, so they put it out early. And over that 13-week time frame, Dubbo starts to look just a little bit messy, and people also go through and look at other people's rubbish and then pick out bits and pieces they might want. They might not leave it in a perfect condition at the end of that. So the whole place looks a bit scrappy. So we thought, let's look at a different way of doing this. Is there a better way? And of course, there's no problem at all looking over the fence and looking at what your neighbours do. So other council areas, we've got information back from those. And we're going to trial for a 12-month period starting from the 1st of July a pre-booking service. And there's a couple of advantages to this, we believe, Keegan. One is that it will keep the city looking tidier. The second is that we think it's more convenient for people. If you miss your bulky waste collection pickup in that 13-week time frame in the past, that's it. You had to wait for a year. with the new one, there'll be a rolling process. Approximately every 2 months, it'll roll around to your zone again, and then you can pre-book the service to be picked up in that time frame that you're allowed. Now, you'll only get one pickup a year still, so you won't get additional pickups, but you'll have more flexibility when you do that pickup. So we're also going to save a little bit of money out of this. There's approximately a $40,000 saving out of doing it this way. So a few advantages there, but the main thing will be communication with the community around when your zone is right for you to come and do your pickup.
Well, when it used to be where I came from, I think it's actually been a solid 5 years since they switched to pre-booked systems. When everyone would put their rubbish out all at the same time, there was one specific cleanup where we put an old fridge out on the council nature strip there, and I think overnight it ended up travelling three streets and ending up in a nature reserve that was like proper bushland, and there was my old fridge. So when everyone puts their rubbish out, it's safe to say people do go around and get up to no good when there is just all of this stuff sitting on the side of the road. So it should be interesting to see how that goes or comes together as we head forward.
Yeah, and some people do get up to some good, because some people do go and look at someone else's trash. It might be their treasure. So I think some people do go and recycle that, but I think you're right as well. When stuff's sitting out there for a while, sometimes people go, I'll just go and throw that away somewhere else or make a bit of a mess. So we're going to trial this and see how it goes, and hopefully it'll be better. But again, we'll like feedback from the public to make sure that this is a better service than the previous service.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Pleasure to have you on this morning.
Thanks, Keegan. Always good to chat.
Thanks, mate.
Mayoral Memo with Matthew Dickinson from Dubbo Regional Council.